When I was growing up, I knew we would come to Shankleville, but I didn't know what to call it. People say, is it a town? No. Is it a, well, what is it? I don't know what it is. It's just Shankleville.
We want to just officially welcome you.
Shankleville originated by Jim and Winnie Shankle and Steve McBride. And the story about Jim and Winnie Shankle is they were both in slave camps in Mississippi.
We're not sure exactly where, but they were enslaved there. So either she was given as a wedding present or she was just sold.
We moved the family and separated the family, one in East Texas and then one in Mississippi, and that being Jim Shankle.
So when Winnie was brought to Texas, Jim was very distraught. He missed her, so he decided he was going to find her. So he ran away, found out where she was, and we like to say swam the Mississippi River, swam the Sabine River, because you have to in order to get from Texas to this area, and found her at a spring.
They had a whistle call between them, and he gave that whistle and she recognized it, and then they were reunited. And then for about a week that went on where she would take him food at the spring, and finally she got enough courage to speak to her master at the time.
So for a long time, everyone was like, well, how did that happen? Because, you know, run away, you would think that he would have just sent him back to Mississippi. The people in Mississippi that owned Jim, the main guy, was the brother of David Ford. And so David just basically wrote his brother and said, look, you know, Jim has run away and he's here, and so, you know, let's make this transaction.
Or they spent the rest of their time here in the Shankleville area. Once emancipation came in 1865.
They were in their 50s by the time they were enslaved, but Jim kind of had skills, and so he kind of did his own thing and was able to make some money on the side.
Jim and a guy named Steve McBride found the resources, pulled the resources together in order to purchase all of the territory that is now called Shankleville.
So Jim and Steve became business partners, purchased land, squatted on some land, because some people say, well, they didn't have that much land, because you go to the deeds and only purchases I see are, you know, several hundred. It's supposed to be a league of land, which is supposedly 4,000 acres. Even today in Texas, if you stay on the land, work the land, pay taxes on the land, eventually it becomes yours. So that's what they did as well.
And over the years, it's been subdivided by different, you know, children and grandchildren, etc. And so now it's pretty dispersed, but quite a bit of it is still owned by the Shankle family.
So Shankleville is remarkable, the history of this space. And what they did was they didn't just privatize that property, they helped to bring individuals in and establish a community here.
The thing that we want to highlight is the resilience that both that Winnie and Jim showed in order to keep their family together, and also once they were freed, the fact that they had the courage, instead of just going and farming fields for other people, they decided to purchase the land, and by doing so, they created a sense of entrepreneurial, you know, movement.
The weight of importance that the descendants have put on the oral history and making sure that the oral history got passed down from generation to generation. We're talking about particularly like the love story that is the bedrock and the foundation of the Shankleville community, that being passed down since, I mean, I think they got here in the late 1850s. Right, 1850, so over 100 years. We're talking about almost 150 years of this story being passed down and maintained in this family and in this community.
We are at the 10th anniversary of the Purple Hole Pea Festival.
The Shankleville resources have now dwindled. There are no businesses really here. The churches are struggling somewhat. And it was first designed to just bring money into the Newton County area.
June in Texas, one of the worst times to be outside. But, you know, people come, they enjoy getting the peas, they enjoy having a place to get fresh peas, they enjoy the contest, and so, you know, it's just a way of bringing people into Shankleville to learn about the history.
We have physical space that also makes it much more tangible. There's still a place to come to. There's a historical marker. There is the festival, that helps us to be able to remember the importance of saying their names and learning of their stories and who they were as people.
Having an event like this where we can be on the land and we can see the history with our own eyes, not only does it modernize it, but it brings the history closer to us.
I pulled up to the festival. I really didn't expect it to be as big as it was. It is a joyous occasion. People are interacting.
I think seeing just the community come together, you see everyone embracing each other, giving hugs, and feels like a little bit of a family reunion. So not only do we get to preserve history and eat some really fantastic food.
Homemade beef lick.
Whole peas can grow in certain environments, and we understand that one of the reasons why they were sort of an item that were in sort of an item of choice for Black folk here is because they could sustain themselves in both the environment of West Africa, West Central Africa, as well as here. Food is probably the most, it's one of the most important aspects of our cultural memory. We are always coming back whenever we eat purple whole peas. It's a celebration. Its very essence forms community.
The Aya Symposium started here at the Texas Purple Whole Pea Festival. The Aya Symposium is an interdisciplinary education forum that brings together enthusiasts, historians, researchers, and descendants of Texas freedom colonies to be able to come together to talk about, again, how we preserve, how do we maintain the legacy, how do we tell the story and the narrative of so many of these Texas freedom colonies, in which were upwards of over 500 of them having been identified, which just shows the magnitude and the scale in which Black people were like, we're going to take care of ourselves and build our own communities.
Yeah, one of Winnie's children's name is Harriet Hole.
It was amazing. So this is, even though it's the 10th anniversary, this is the first time that I've heard about it.
But everyone's really welcoming and excited to see each other, and that connection and strength is really felt.
Something to just make Shankleville be on the map.
Hot as it is, as tired as it is wonderful to be able to come back and be part of upholding and uplifting the history and legacy here.
I always say that people look at African American history as, woe is me history, and to fight slavery and fight. But there's also areas that show how triumphant and how even when there were hard times that they were able to, as they say, make a way out of no way.
History helps to ground us. It helps to provide markers of value and importance and meaning in our lives. Having these traditions, having these celebrations helps to bring our focus back to the past and remind us of who we are, what our values are, the struggles that have been through, and they help to provide the next generation with a roadmap that they can use to sustain themselves going forward.
For young people to also look to go back and help the communities for which their foreparents came from.
I want them to be connected to their roots and to their history. I want them to see the past as something as like, nah, we did that. Despite the circumstances, despite the oppression, despite what was going on and what our status was in this country, we still took charge where we could, and we thrived.
When we learn about these things, we feel like they're so far removed, but being able to sit with actual descendants of the community and hear their stories and see how rich the heritage still is, it just makes the history present.
And we multiplied, and we, remained empowered. And I think that's important, because then when we see ourselves, we know directly. It doesn't have to be kings and queens in Egypt. It has to be, those who still persisted here in this country that did the daggone thing, really, to make sure that we could still exist today.
I just think it's amazing, and I think that we need to learn from that even today. Thad Sitton and Robert Conrad wrote a book called Freedom Colonies. That's the term that we tend to use now for these unincorporated communities, basically settled by emancipated Texans who own their own land, different from sharecropping.
This was a space where people could come, they could grow their food, they could sustain themselves.
Had their own grist mill, sawmill, little stores, little businesses and everything, and worked it and made a sort of an insular community.
The Texas Freedom Colonies Project, founded by Dr. Andrea Roberts, she goes into these Black freedom colonies, works alongside them to provide them with resources, to document their histories.
These spaces were outposts that challenged systems of exploitation, labor exploitation, and creation of Black ideas and work.
I understand how important it is to the people that are here in Shankleville and all across Texas to learn this history. It's a privilege.
Those Texas Freedom Colonies are a lesson, reminder, story about resilience of African American people. If that was just one, then you could say, you know, those people were special. But the fact that there's over 500 shows you that no, this was these people making it happen for themselves after slavery was over with.
Black freedom colonies still exist and people are still here and the areas are still thriving and growing and doing and being.
This community never went away, that it's still here. It says something about who we are. We should never let Shankleville go away.